Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day and you're finding your knitting ideas, your yarns, your projects, and you're getting started. Yesterday, we talked about being able to get your machine dusted, cleaned, oiled, make sure you had no static, and you are looking for your books and any of your manuals that belong to your machine. So today we're going to talk a little bit about doing your swatches. Now, I know swatches are an aggravating thing that most people want to skip, but what's important about doing a swatch is that you get an idea of how your yarn is going to behave on your knitting machine. And I like to suggest to you that you make a rectangle that is large enough to do a little purse like this, making sure that you're making it long enough so that it's longer than your cell phone, so that you have extra room up here at the top to be sure that your phone doesn't slide out of your bag. Now, it's easy enough to do those. Just make it wide enough and make it long enough so that it is twice the length of your cell phone plus a couple of inches, because it does give you an idea of what your yarn's going to knit, how it's going to behave on the machine, if you like the gauge that you're knitting at, and make a strap so that it just goes. I prefer to wear mine so that it's across my body rather than just on my shoulder. You can wear it just on your shoulder if you want to, and that'll give you a way to begin to have something really fun and easy for you to check your swatches, but not actually calling it a swatch, because I know that that word just sends people right up the wall. What's important about reps per inch at this moment in time is there are people from all over the world who are creating knitting patterns, and some of the yarns are not available to us, even if the person is writing them today in today's time. But many of the patterns are from many years ago. So what we have then is the yarns that are not available to us, and you can look at on your pattern. If it's an older pattern, you can look to see how many inches the swatch is from the yarn that they're suggesting. Now, if you then can duplicate that inches number with the yarn that you want to use today, you are successfully able to create a swatch and be able to use it for any knit project that you want to do today. We have a variety of knitting machines. Some of them are electronic and have quite a small hook. Some of them are standard and have a little bit larger hook. Some of them are bulky and have a little bit larger hook. So if the yarn will fit into the hook, you can knit it on your knitting machine. If you have a finer needled hook, you can still knit bulky yarn on it, but you have to do it every other needle or every third needle rather than every needle, because there's not a space in the channels for you to use a very bulky yarn that is something that you would buy for a project that might work a little bit better on a bulky knitting machine. But you have those options to be able to find the things that will work for you, that will give you some interesting combinations. It's fun to be able to use the yarns that you have in your stash. Now, when you are looking at your stash, I'm going to show you tomorrow a creative way for you to store your yarn so that when you are working with it, you're not having it just piled up in a heap in the corner. And bulky yarn and your cone yarns are a little bit difficult to store. So I want to show you a couple of creative ways for you to be able to use those cones and have them available at your fingertips so you can tell exactly how much yarn you have. Now, when you're starting a project and you do knit a little swatch, gauge swatch, or a sample swatch, like a little purse as I suggested, you can't unravel that and re-knit it in the same project, because the knitted yarn from your swatch or um, rectangle will knit up differently than the swatch or the garment that you are knitting using yarn that has never been knit before. So please keep that in mind. If you're kind of short on the amount of yarn that you have available, then a smaller swatch would work well for you. If you have sufficient, then do something with it. I also often recommend that you do rectangles that are long enough for you to create garments that you can wear. And again, tomorrow we'll be talking a little bit about some of the rectangles that you are able to use and how you can use those to actually have a garment that you are completed with. It's fun to be able to have something come off your knitting machine and be wonderful. So it gives you the opportunity to be able to enjoy the process of getting started again. That's one of the most difficult things that we find, is that having your yarn and having sufficient yarn and having the right size and all of those kinds of things can be a little bit of an issue at times. So if you have a few of your cones of yarn that don't have a lot of yarn on them, but you have some yarn on them, I'm also going to be showing you how to use little bits and pieces of your yarn in creating wonderful fun garments, vests and sweaters and reversible things, so that you are able to use up all those little bits and pieces and scraps that you have around that are not a lot, but I hate to throw things away if I could do something with it. And I've created some really fun things that have really enjoyed wearing because I have used the different kinds of scrap yarns together, coordinated them into a group of yarns that I can knit with a solid color that works. Say, for an example, you have a black yarn and you have lots of different more brightly colored yarns. You can put those using your black or your blue or your red or whatever color you'd like. You can use up all those bits and pieces of yarn. And then when you get to the end where you still have a little dab left, but not enough to really do anything with, you can chop those up and fuse them into between fusible layers and create a tote bag or a bag to carry your yarn in if you're out and about and you need to be working on finishing your garment. I sell my work to stores. So if somebody goes into a store and buys one of my sweaters, the alteration department, if they need to pull up the sleeve or tuck it in a little bit or make an alteration on it, when I was putting them together by hand or with my linker, they used to mess them up to the point that they'd be sending them back to me to repair them. Now the knitting machine items are sewn together on my sewing machine so that the seams can be easily taken apart, because alteration people do understand sewing stitches, and they can take the sweaters apart and correct the garments for the customer so that the customer is happy with what they're getting. Say they wanted a little bit more shape in the side seam so it fit their body a little bit more, and they didn't like that straight up and down. The alteration people in the stores that I have worked with are able to fix those for the customers, and the customers are really happy. Now, you may do whatever assembly works well for you. I'm just sharing that you can use your knitting machine items and sew them together on a sewing machine so that you have them ready to go. So happy knitting!